never need a drink after I've put lipstick on. Well, you're going to be purple forever now, so, you know, good luck. Excuse me, sir, what are you doing? You might be able to tell that I'm feeling a little bit random today, so it is time for a random video. Hi guys, it's Leanne and I've got a new header on my channel. Did you see it? I have been working with some very talented individuals behind the scenes to shake things up around here a little bit. So we have a new header and we have a new intro animation coming in, you know, the imminent future. We have new bookshelves, we have a new book trolley, we have new Taylor Swift merch for the Tis the Damn Readathon. All of the links are down below. And we are planning for my second lockdown birthday. It is my birthday on the 4th of March. There is going to be a live stream on the 3rd with some very, very lovely people. Links to that will also be below so you can whack the reminder button on. So as you can probably tell, it's been a little bit busy around here recently. And so I got to thinking, when I'm stressed like this, all I want is quick reads. I just want quick wins. I want little books that I can fly through really quickly that don't feel like really little books. Because you know my issue with like starting short books and being terrified that I'm just going to start loving the characters and then they're going to be gone. Also the reason why I don't read many short story collections. No, I want substantial little books that have like full plot arcs in them and that make you feel all the things, but not in a manipulative way. Not in a I only had 100 pages so I just decided to make you cry way. But in like a this book has left you with something way. So that's what we're going to talk about today, in case you, like I, am actually finding yourself busier than you have ever been during this portion of, you know, our current world troubles that shall not be named. Because let's just have like one space on the internet where we don't talk about it, shall we? We'll make that here. I have made a list. Onwards! Wow, the battery ran out before we even got past the introduction. How rude. The first book that I'm going to recommend for you is one if you need a laugh. If you need to just sit down and have a solid giggle. Everything is a little bit fraught right now and I think sometimes we just need to sit down and be able to laugh at ourselves. And that's definitely the definition of wow, no thank you from Samantha Irby. I love all of the names of Samantha Irby's essay collections. They are amazing. Also technically chronologically this is the third one, but it's the one that I started with. They actually go meaty, we are never meeting in real life, and then wow no thank you. You know, if you want to chronologically follow Samantha Irby's life and self-confessed failures, that is the order that you should go in. Samantha Irby is fat, black, queer, opinionated and fabulous, so basically all of my favourite things. In this essay collection she's navigating settling down as a married black woman in a very, very, very white upper class neighbourhood. She's quit her job, and because she's written so many successful essay memoir collections, Hollywood has come a knocking. And because of that, she has very much landed in the world of social media. There is an entire essay in this collection which is just so accurate. So accurate if you have Instagram. Everybody else's perfect and flawless skincare and healthy eating and exercise and, you know, just aesthetic dream routines. And then looking at yourself sitting in your sweats and a 3-day-old t-shirt on the couch looking at that person. We've all been there. Every single one of us has felt bad on social media at some point about ourselves and then become like weirdly uncomfortable in our own skin. This is kind of an exploration of Samantha Irby working out what it means now that she's redefined herself by so many different things. But there are also essays in here about trying to host a book club in a small Republican town, about being a stepmom to 2 children and trying to teach them good things when you're not actually that sure you're a good person. But it's also a love letter to growing older and a big screw you to like the cartilage in your knees and your sore back and all the other things that they don't tell you you're gonna have when you leave 30. This one also holds the unique title of the essay collection that made me laugh so much that I actually started crying and then went back to laughing again. I cannot recommend highly enough. Next up, moving back to some fiction, I am going to recommend to you what is potentially the hardest hitting novella I have ever read in my entire life. I don't hear anybody ever talking about this, so I take as many opportunities to talk about it myself as I possibly can. I just want to get it into everybody's hands. This This is Address Unknown by Katherine Kressman Taylor, and it is on my best books of all time list. If I had to pick 10 books, only 10 that I was allowed to keep from my library, only 10 books I was allowed to read for the rest of my life, this would be one of those books. Also, this was published in 1938 in the States and became a worldwide phenomenon for like 2 years and then just disappeared. This novella is a collection of letters written between a Jewish art dealer living in San Francisco and his business partner, who is white and German and who has moved back to Germany at the height of Hitler coming to power. These two men have been friends for almost their entire life, but Martin, seeing the unrest that is happening at the start of the war, decides that he wants his children to have a European education. He wants them to see both sides of every argument. But in going back to Germany, he finds himself caught in a web, and his attitudes towards his Jewish lifetime friend start to take a really alarming turn. When I first started reading this, I didn't know what to expect. In fact, I read it aloud to Lovely Wife Helen the first time, and we got halfway through it and we were like, I don't know where this book is going. It's amazing, but I don't know where it's going, and we have so few pages left. And then the twist happens, and we got to the end and we cried a lot, and then we started reading it all over again and did it twice in the one night, because what happens is so terrifying and so alarming that you have to like read it again in order to believe that it has happened. How anybody can write such a powerful interpretation of prejudice and of really pervasive, terrifying groupthink that pulls people under. How they can show the cult-like consciousness of what was going on at that time in so few pages and still surprise me at the end just blows my mind. And if none of that is good enough to persuade you, then let me add that this is only 64 pages and it's still made it into my top 10 of all time. Think about that for a minute. Okay, minutes passed, let's talk about other books, but you should read this. Not all quick reads have to be a tiny amount of pages. Some of them can be many pages, but still go past at lightning speed. And that was the case for me with Soulless by Gail Carriger. This is another novel that I absolutely do not know why I don't talk about it more, because I absolutely love it and the world that it created. This is a steampunk paranormal romance. I guess that would be the best way to put it. This is about Alexia Tarabotti, and she is soulless. She is living in an alternative Victorian England, and her particular power is that she renders all other supernatural creatures around her powerless. When werewolves touch her skin, they lose their ability to transform into werewolves. When vampires touch her skin, their fangs retract and all of their powers leave them. And if she touches a ghost, poof, they no longer exist. Alexia is a bit of a social pariah anyway, because you know she's Italian and quite outspoken, but at the beginning of this novel, when trying to escape from a society party into, you know, a library, she is very rudely assaulted by a vampire of some prominence who doesn't actually know who she is. Gail Carriger's novels for me really ride this really thin line between slapstick romance and oh my god, what's gonna happen? And the fact that in this scene we are both terrified for her life and also worried for the treacle tarts that she has sat on just says to me that it's a winner. Also, if you're hanging around my channel because you like my Scottish accent, and I know that there are a few of you, then this novel is definitely for you, because the vampire love interest, Lord Macon, is large, imposing and very Scottish and doesn't really understand how things work in the English tone and doesn't really care. He breaks a lot of rules and a lot of furniture and is just generally surly and great. He's surly and great. I flew through this. This series is wonderful, and the good thing is that there's 5 books in this. It's completed, but there are also follow-up books. There are some prequels that do kind of spy things in a secret society set before this, and then there is a follow-up to this about Alexia's children. So really, what more could you ask for? Except an unsquashed treacle tart. Although, you know, I'm not picky, I would take a squashed one too. While I'm recommending my favourites, I may as well recommend you a thriller from one of my favourite thriller authors. This is one that I'm going to massively preface by saying this isn't my favourite book from this author, but it is one that does go by very, very quickly, and it's a nice taster for her later books, for the way that her style started to evolve. And I will also preface it by saying that this is not a psychological thriller. This is not a thriller that you go in if you want red herrings and twists and turns and darkness. This is a thriller that you go into if you want candy floss for the brain. This thriller is, of course, In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. I have long described Ruth Ware as just being fun. She writes fun page-turning thrillers that you don't have to think about too much. And I don't necessarily think that that has to be a bad thing. I don't think that every thriller that we read has to be twisty and psychological. Sometimes it can be just a fun mystery in which a few people die. And we're glad when our protagonist gets to the end and is more or less okay. In A Dark, Dark Wood follows Nora. She is herself a mystery writer and she is working on her new book when she gets an invitation from an old classmate. Nora has not heard from Claire for years. They used to be really, really good friends, but they lost touch, and now all of a sudden Claire has invited Nora to a hen do, to a bachelorette party, which is the least fun thing that Nora can think to ever go to, and I for one agree. But Nora's pretty socially awkward and she's just not sure how to say no, and so she ends up getting convinced to come for a weekend to a cabin in the woods with one person that she knew quite a long time ago quite well but hasn't seen for a long time, and a whole host of other people, and she has no idea who they are. She's in a cabin in a wood with no cell reception and virtual strangers. I mean, it's not going to end well. We're all aware it's not going to end well. And it doesn't, and it's delightful. I read it in like 2 sittings and I think it's great. I also think because it is Ruth Ware's debut, it gives you a nice jumping off point if you want to go and investigate her other works. Could read her in chronological order and go on to The Women in Cabin 10, which is also delightful and dumb and it's great. Or you could jump in with some of her more recent works, which are definitely leaning on the darker brain candy floss side. Black brain candy floss. Metaphor has gone too far. Either way, you could jump in with The Death of Mrs. Westaway or The Turn of the Key. They're all just great. Speaking of things that are just great, I may as well just, you know, it was gonna happen. It was gonna happen at some point when I was talking about quick reads. I'm gonna recommend to you an Agatha Christie. If you've been on my channel for any length of time, you know that I absolutely love Agatha Christie. Her novels are some of my favourite. In fact, her Miss Marple series may very well be one of my favourite series of all time. One of those books is most definitely on my top 10. I would, you know, read that book for the rest of my life books. But I'm glad I don't have to choose because I like all the other ones in that series too. Anyway, I have recommended Marple quite a lot recently, so let's just switch it up a little bit and recommend for you a Poirot novel. They all go by really quickly, every single one of them. I don't think there's a single Poirot novel that's over 350 pages and like a small mass market paperback size. You can definitely finish them in one sitting. I frequently do. And the good thing about Agatha Christie is that she hands you all of the building blocks one after another, and you can choose to try and solve it if you want, or you can just wait for the bit at the end where you're like, ah, Poirot is very smart, isn't he? I'm not going to recommend to you any of the big ones that you've heard of, like Murder on the Orient Express, because you can find them on your own. I'm going to recommend you an extremely obscure Poirot that almost nobody reads. This is Poirot Investigates, and if you're reading the series chronologically, it is book 3. And technically, it's a collection of short stories. I know! Gasp! Leanne is actually recommending short stories, but these short stories are different. All of Agatha Christie's short stories are different. Because in this book, although all of the short stories seem completely disparate, they all seem to be different scenarios and different investigations, there is a through line which culminates in the last story and is just like, where did that come from? In fact, screw it, one of my favourite Marple books is also the 13 Problems, which is 13 individual crime and mystery stories all told around a dinner table and culminating in Miss Marple solving the one that nobody could solve because they're all connected, and it's just great. And this collection is just very cool. The way that it winds up is just very cool. And also, if you are like me and you believe that it is perfectly acceptable to interpret some older fiction as having a definite queer queer leaning, then this is a novel in which Poirot and Hastings are very much boyfriends and they're very much bickering their way through solving all of the cases. I love the Poirot novels that feature Hastings. I love it when they're just clearly dating and clearly have very different tastes in things and very different ways to go about things. And Hastings is just irredeemably shallow and Poirot is just irredeemably smug, and it's great. It's a good time. Next up, let's do a little classic. Let's do a book that I read a couple of years ago thinking, I know everything about this story. Nothing in here is going to surprise me, and then made me eat my words. Like all of them. Like it. Now I have purple on me. That was foolish. And that tiny little screwed up novel is The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. I honestly thought that I really did know everything there was to know about this story. I've seen adaptations before, I have heard it talked about so many times, and I was like, I don't know if I actually want to read that book. I know that other people have a different reaction to hearing about classics where they're like, oh, I really want to know where all of these references come from. But me, I hit like saturation point and I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. I feel like I know it all already. But every time recently I have gone against that instinct and read a classic book, I have had that fact proved wrong. Another recommendation that proved me wrong actually that's not in this video is Amityville Horror. That one is very short and quick and very creepy and totally proved me wrong because I knew nothing. I knew nothing. Anyway, back to Stepford Wives. So of course this is a book about the tiny little town of Stepford. Joanna and her husband Walter rock up in this town after agreeing that in order to save their marriage they need to settle somewhere that's just like small town America. This little town is like the 1950s came up and just done smacked you right in the face. All of the wives bake pie, all of the wives go to the grocery store in full makeup and full tea dresses. The husbands have a club that they all go to and smoke cigars at and chortle at their little women back home. All of the kids are rosy and clean all of the time. Essentially Joanna gets there and thinks, what is this shit? Because none of it seems real and none of it seems plausible, and very quickly we discover that is because none of it is real and none of it is plausible. But now that Joanna is there, Joanna may never be able to leave, because the Joanna as we know her might not exist anymore. This is delightfully torturous because if you know anything about Stepford Wives, you already kind of know where it's going, so you're sitting there like, the entire time, knowing there's nothing you can do. She's walked into a spider web, and that little spider is very much on its chonky way to come and gobble her. Sorry if there's any arachnophobics here, I've recently become obsessed with spiders, I love them very much. Everything is now a spider metaphor. However, having seen some adaptations of this, I did not realise that the book does not end in any such way. The adaptations all try to give it this really satisfying ending, and that is not what happens in the book. Guarantee you, you'll get to the last page of this one and you'll be like, and you'll do it really quickly because it just whizzes by. Next up, I'm going to break the mold once again, and I'm going to recommend an actual short story collection. This is Not the End of the World by Kate Atkinson, and it's kind of mind-blowing that I read it in the first place. I love Kate Atkinson, I really do. I very much worship Kate Atkinson, except for her Jackson Brodie series, that can get in the bin. But this one is kind of like Greek mythology with a twist. And I usually have to be persuaded into both short story collections and Greek mythology, so when they occur together I'm usually like, yeah, nope. But I absolutely love this book. Also, there is definitely a theme here with the types of short story collections that I like, because this is another one that has a through line. There are some characters that come in the early stories that recur in the middle, and at the end it wraps things up in a way that I was just like, I never need to read another book again because Kate Atkinson has ruined me for all of them. Also, this collection is really timely in some quite uncomfortable ways. At the beginning of this, sisters Charlie and Trudy are listening to bombs fall softly in the distance, knowing that whatever is outside is coming closer and that there's no way for them to escape, and they are making lists about the end of the world. Then we've got Meredith, who thinks that she has just found the secret to eternal life, but doesn't really know if she wants it or, you know, what she wants to do with it. Mostly she also thinks that can get in the bin. There are stories in here about parents and children and the taking of a journey which And there are stories in here which will literally make you cackle out loud and be glad that people got their comeuppance. But honestly, there's a weird kind of emotional roller coaster inside this very tiny collection. I ended up on highs and lows and not knowing how I got there and just loving the entire experience. If you want to just sit back and have a quick read that literally just feeds you things and you don't have to think too much, and then you get to the last page and your mind is still blown, this is the short story collection for you. Yeah. And finally, let's end with something that will give you a chuckle, but also something a little more substantial. This one is another novel. It is a thriller novel and it is a little bit longer. It's definitely in like the 300 plus range, but I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly how many pages it was because I read it so freaking quickly. And although I think it is about time that I updated my top 10 thrillers list, this one is still absolutely going to be on it. And if you've been around my channel for any length of time, you will know what's coming next. This is Sweetpea by CJ Skuse, and it follows the adventures of Rhiannon, who is just a perfectly normal girl. She doesn't like people, she has a job at a newspaper that isn't really going anywhere and it has a crap office atmosphere. She lives with her builder boyfriend who's just kind of fine, and a dog who likes only her. And oh, by the way, she also writes kill lists and is actually a serial killer. And she's also a funny serial killer because her kill lists include people like that guy at Lidl that bruised my apples when they went through on the checkout, and like the person who talked too loudly in the queue somewhere, and anybody who touches her Sylvanian family collection, because obviously that's precious and those people should die. Rhiannon has had an interesting childhood and she's not sure why nobody knows who she is, but that's also, you know, fine. Until one day when she crosses paths with somebody and everything kind of goes to crap. This novel won a lot of things for me, like the funniest thriller that I've ever read that still kept me on the edge of my seat, but also the weirdest kill scene ever. The weirdest, most abrupt and in-your-face kill scene ever, and it still makes me laugh to this day. There's a lot of swearing in this novel, there's a lot of really dark humour, and there's a lot of moments that make me go, is somebody watching me? Like, do they have CCTV inside of my head? Because I definitely think some of these things. Rhiannon is literally the most relatable person I have ever met. And what's even better is that once you have absolutely raced your way through this one, this is the start of a series and the third book has just come out. It's just fabulous, and I talk about it any opportunity that I get, so you've probably already heard about it, but my point stands. It bears repeating. So there we go, guys. There is a big list of very quick reads for you when you, like me, are inundated with stuff to do and you just want something satisfying that will go speeding by like a bullet. As always, let me know if you have read anything that was on my quick list, or if you have any other quick reads that you would like to recommend to me, because I am always in the market for them. Don't forget to whack the reminder button if you would like to come to my birthday live stream, where there will be quizzes and there will be wine and there will probably be chaos because we're all insane when we get together. And also, if you like this video, consider whacking the like button and subscribing if you are new for more of my face and your feed. Come on, you need this stupidity in your life, right? And I will speak to you guys very soon. Bye! Hello, little kitty. Oh, you are getting too big to pick up with one hand. No, stay and love me. Stay and love me. Or, you know, don't. That's also fine.